Well, good morning. Don't get to say that very often. And welcome. I'd like to call to order our Lucan Biddulph Council meeting for Tuesday, August the 11th. I would like to acknowledge that I am an ally of Indigenous peoples. The township of Lucan Biddulph is located on the treaty and traditional territory and ancestral lands of many Indigenous peoples and is covered by several Upper Canada treaties. We honor and respect the history, languages, and culture of the diverse Indigenous peoples who call Lucan Biddulph home. We endeavor to unlearn colonial mindsets and practices and to grow in knowledge. As we build meaningful relationships, we recognize contributions of Indigenous peoples and respect their leadership and partnership in shaping and strengthening our community. We acknowledge historic and ongoing injustices that Indigenous peoples endure in Canada, and we affirm our commitment to honoring Indigenous voices, nations, and cultures, and to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none. So we have some special guests in our audience this morning. And that is because we have the opportunity this morning to recognize and celebrate an incredible milestone, and that's 35 years of service to Lucan Biddulph by our CAO, Ron Raymer. 35 years represents an extraordinary commitment to our community, and throughout those years, Ron has witnessed, contributed, and been a consistent presence to all that Lucan Biddulph has experienced during that time. And I should say, it's not just Lucan Biddulph started out as Lucan, and then you've taken us into Lucan Biddulph. Through changes in councils, staff, legislation, technology, and most importantly, the tremendous growth in our community, Ron has provided experience, knowledge, and continuity. He has been involved in some of the most significant decisions and projects in our municipality's history, always helping council navigate the challenges and opportunities that come with serving a growing community. What makes a milestone like this so special is that it's not simply about the number of years. It is about the countless days, projects, challenges, and successes that those years represent. It is about the people that you have worked alongside, the residents that you have served, and the difference that you've made along the way. So on behalf of council, our staff, and so I'm so glad that some of our staff has joined us that don't usually come to council meetings. And the residents of Lucan Biddulph, thank you, Ron, for 35 years of dedicated service to our community. Your wife, Lisa, and daughter, Kaylee, are here. And of course, we have to thank them as well because we meet on nights, so that's you're giving up, family time to come and serve your community. And of course, I hear the stories about the times that the phone goes off in the middle of the night and that sort of thing. So thank you for sharing Ron with us. Congratulations, Ron. 35 years of service to one employer is significant. It is something that you and your family should be incredibly proud of. And I know this council, past councils, and our residents are grateful for your service. So thank you very much. So we'll get a picture, but we do just have a certificate and card of thanks. Okay.
Obviously, I didn't know this was coming, so I didn't have an opportunity to prepare any written words, but thank you very much. I'm very honored to have been part of Lucan Biddulph for this amount of time. But anyway, I just want to say thank you. It's been an honor.
We'll get a picture. Do I have any tears?
I was me.
Oh, we can do it when you're after the meeting too. The whole family would have been here. Busy doing work. There's not, so we're very proud. Thank you. Thanks.
I guess.
She should.
Okay. All right, so this morning, we've got one presentation. I'm not actually going to call you a delegation, a presentation. Josh White is joining us, and of course, Josh is the Middlesex County Procurement Services Manager. He's been here before. It's great to have you back. And Josh, I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, and congratulations to Ron on the incredible milestone. So I'm here today to talk about probably what is the biggest change in procurement legislation, at least in my decade in the municipal field, the Buy Ontario Act. Just some quick background. Back when tariff talk first started with the United States and relationships started to sour on the trade front, municipalities wanted a way to promote Canadian goods and services. But unfortunately, at that period of time, there was a little piece of legislation from the province of Ontario called the Discriminatory Practices Act, which forbid a municipality to not do business with somebody based on their geographic location, unless if there was a piece of legislation out there that said otherwise. So of course, once that started, municipalities, procurement professionals, the county itself lobbied both the provincial and the federal government, asking for a piece of legislation that would allow us to give preference to our provincial and national suppliers. And then with that, approximately a year later, we got the Buy Ontario Act. I'll preface this presentation. There's a lot of language within it. That's because I wanted to convey the act as it is written by the province. I'll, of course, out of respect for your time, paraphrase this, but if there is anything that any member of council would like me to delve deeper into, please ask so at the end of the presentation. So a quick overview. The Buy Ontario Act is a legislative framework, and within that there are two directives. First came the Buy Ontario Procurement Directive, which came into place fall 2025. That applied to public sector entities except municipalities and gave them the ability to give preference to Canadian Ontario suppliers. Following that, in April of this year, we got the Municipal Buy Ontario Procurement Directive, and under that there are two policies, the fleet policy and the capital infrastructure policy, which came into place April and May respectively. Before we go a little deeper into it, why is it important to be compliant with the Buy Ontario Act? Well, there's a few reasons. First and foremost, the province is saying that they may withhold funds to municipalities for non-compliance. During an audit process, they are willing and stated that they would name and shame municipalities who were not compliant with the Buy Ontario Act. And they could also direct corrective action to procurements that were awarded in violation of the Buy Ontario Act, which you can imagine is very complicated to adjust a contract that is already in place, whether it's from a supplier standpoint or where the goods and services are coming from within it. So first, and probably the easiest to comprehend of the two policies, the fleet vehicle policy. And of course, the province is wanting municipalities to prioritize made in Ontario vehicles. With that, this applies to vehicles under 4,500 pounds, which would be our typical pickup truck SUV fleet. The larger machines, which we all know 99% of them all come from the United States. They're not applicable under this act. There's no way around it. In addition to that, some items that are out of scope, you can see here on the screen right now. I won't go through all of them, but short-term leases, vehicles that are modified, so our ambulance, police, some fire vehicles are not applicable to it. As well as, interestingly, we're seeing a lot of municipalities consider the use of used vehicles, and I'll get into why shortly. So the requirements, like I mentioned, first and foremost, the province is requiring to have municipalities procure made in Ontario vehicles where operationally feasible. What operationally feasible means isn't necessarily clear. But based on the guidance that procurement professionals have received through the OPBA and third-party legal sources, basically, as long as a municipality is operating the intent of the Buy Ontario Act, they are able to define what is operationally feasible. So if the municipality were to require a pickup truck within 3 months, the municipality attempts to source a made in Ontario vehicle within 3 months and it's not operationally feasible at that point and it cannot be delivered, they can move to the second tier of vehicles. The second tier of vehicles is the Ontario Vehicle Producer, which you'll see shortly on the next slide. There's a whole list of them that qualify for that. Basically, that is a vehicle producer that creates at least 1,500 annualized jobs across the province. And then finally, if neither are available, then a municipality can go out and procure vehicles as they normally would on the open market. So if you go to the next slide, you can see here, so that tier 1, I would say, made Ontario vehicles with a VIN number that starts with 2. There's a list there. I've underlined the Chevrolet Silverado. That is the only pickup truck that is made in Ontario. So every single public sector entity will be trying to procure a Chevrolet Silverado made out of Oshawa first. You can imagine there's a lot of challenges like we had during COVID with the delays of everybody sourcing from one single person. There's also the potential challenge of, due to the limited quantities, that prices could increase. And it's also been discovered since this act has come into place that the model of Silverado that is produced out in Oshawa are the higher end trims, and the base models are actually produced in the United States and Mexico. Sorry, if you could go back, the Ontario Vehicle Producers, you can see there at the bottom of the screen, that's pretty much all encompassing. And then another potential problem that we are expected to run up against some municipalities order SUVs. You can see the list. It's pretty comprehensive there, but the challenge is that anytime we've gone out to the open market for procurement of these vehicles, those suppliers have not participated. So I imagine to be compliant with the act, there's going to be a lot of more leg work for municipalities and procurement teams in terms of getting these suppliers to provide quotes. Next page. So this is the more challenge of the two policies, the Capital Infrastructure Directive. And like the vehicle policy, they're trying to direct municipal funds and construction projects to Ontario-made and Canadian-made goods. If we go to the next slide. So you see here the applicable scope. Again, I won't go through it in detail, but basically any construction project, fixtures, furnitures, and larger transit fleet vehicles, which isn't necessarily an issue with most of our municipalities unless one were to be purchasing a bus. Actually, if we went back here, another interesting aspect of the Buy Ontario Act is that the province is asking municipalities to apply aspects of this directive to vendor of record arrangements, or other words, group purchasing organizations, so CANU, OECM, things of that nature. When these lists, preferred lists are produced on these particular entities, obviously this happened prior to the Buy Ontario Act taking place. So when they derive these lists, the requirements of the act weren't taken into account. When we go out to market and utilize this list, the province expects us to require information as to how it satisfies the Ontario-made, Canadian-made, which we'll get a little further into in this presentation when making our selection, as opposed to being able to go directly with a vendor that is on the list like we were able to previously. Next page. So here's the definition of construction. I won't again go through this. Council can read it at its own leisure, but essentially any construction project moving forward that a municipality is going to procure, no matter what way they're going to procure, falls under this act. And then out of scope items, you can see here very essential items like medical equipment, information technology. Most of the technology we use is made outside of Canada. It would be impossible for it to apply to this act. So procurement requirements under the capital infrastructure policy, there's two main things. One, a list of each major good and each service, and again, I'll have a definition on the next page, has to be identified by the municipality. And then they're also within the procurement documents a requirement for the bidders to submit a domestic supply chain plan identifying where the goods and services are coming from for each one of those identified major goods and services. It doesn't have to get so granular as to it's coming from town X, Y, and Z. all they need to indicate is whether the good or service is Ontario made, Canadian made, or elsewhere. So major goods you can see here. This is the list that the province has provided within the Act under its definition. That said, they do mention that it is not all encompassing. As we've been putting tenders together, we've done a couple now that fall under this policy. We've had some scenarios where we've had an engineer stick to the exact list that's provided here by the province, and we've had another one go through their entire tender and basically list every single item. As of right now, based on the legislation, there is no correct way as long as the items that you see on your screen right now are identified within a tender document. So how is the domestic supply chain evaluated? Well, for below $347,000 and $400 for construction procurements and $139, and I'll get into shortly why those values are set the way they are. Municipalities must apply a 10% evaluation advantage for the bidder with the highest domestic supply chain score. So you can see there as an example, we have tender A coming in at 95,000, tender B at 100,000, but because tender B has a higher percentage of Ontario made goods and services, they get a 10% evaluation advantage. So they'd be evaluated as if that was a $90,000 bid. And therefore, under the Act, the municipality would be required to award to company B. A couple questions that have come in early stages of us implementing this act in procurement. Contractors feel that it's unfair that if there's a 1% difference in a domestic supply chain plan versus 100% difference, that same 10% evaluation advantage applies, which is the case. And then I think across the procurement world, professionals are wondering where we have a scenario like we have on the screen there, A and B, but A is the only bid that's under budget. Is the municipality required to go with company B even though it's over budget? Does the bid get canceled? How does that work out? So we're all waiting for our first case and example, how the act would apply for that because it's not actually stipulated. And then once we know that, of course, we'll implement that into our language within our tender documents, how that would work. So above those thresholds, and the reason why those thresholds apply is conveniently, that's where the Canadian Free Trade Agreement starts to take place. So above those numbers that you see on your screen, there's multiple ways to look at this. One is the 10% evaluation advantage to the highest bidder, but previously on the last slide, we were only looking at the Ontario made goods and services. Now we're also incorporating Canadian made goods and services. But interestingly, I don't have the formulas on there, but when we're doing the calculation for this domestic supply chain plan, it's actually the value of Ontario made goods and services ×2 plus the Canadian made. So we had a situation with a tender out at the municipality of Strathroy-Caradoc. We had bidders getting a domestic supply chain score of over 100% because just adding the Ontario value of goods and services, which is a little strange when you're calculating how much of a project is made in Ontario or made in Canada. And then there's another method under here. It's more like an RFP scenario where we would factor in the time frame of the project. Usually when we go out to tender for large construction projects, we have a deadline. I can't see that pertain to many of our procurements that we go out, but the province has given us an option to factor in the timeline with that 10% evaluation weighting. So if you go to the next slide, aside from the evaluation approach, the province has given municipalities the option to use a commitment approach. And essentially what it is that a municipality, when they issue the procurement document, they still have to identify the major goods and services. They still have to request a domestic supply chain plan. But instead of giving a 10% evaluation advantage, they can require bidders to have a specific portion of Ontario made, or once you're over that $347,000 construction threshold, Ontario plus Canadian made percentage. Truthfully, the first two tenders that we did under this policy, we had third-party engineers involved and they did not feel comfortable providing that percentage. And the rationale is that, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, the province may audit this. We're asking municipalities to document everything. If a municipality is going to set a specific percentage as to which they feel vendors should be able to meet, we're asking them to document it, the rationale as to why. So when they are audited, or if there's a third-party engineer involved, that they provide the municipality the rationale as to why they picked that particular percentage, so that if an audit comes back, the municipality can refer to the expert advice that they received. As I mentioned, first couple scenarios under this policy, the engineers did not feel comfortable doing so. Actually, we just had one go up for the municipality of Southwest Middlesex where our engineer did feel comfortable in doing so. And then the difference becomes that as long as the vendors meet that particular percentage, evaluating a tender would go back to the way that we always had for the last 30, 40 years based on low compliant price. So the province has given a value for money exclusion, as you can see on your screen in front of you, basically stipulating that if a municipality can identify that following the Buy Ontario Act will lead to at least 25% more in estimated costs, they can forgo the requirements of the act. And again, if a municipality were to go this route, we are advising that obviously you document the rationale as to why. There's a significant amount of market research that would likely need to happen in the first place. But again, we haven't seen any situations where a municipality has effectively used this exclusion to date. Next slide, please. So another item of the act is that obviously if it conflicts with funding agreements that a municipality received, it doesn't necessarily need to apply the Buy Ontario Act, although they're encouraging it wherever possible. They're also encouraging municipalities and public sector entities to negotiate within their agreements for funding that the Buy Ontario requirements apply. So I've identified a few, but here's a list of potential challenges that we anticipate or have ran into already. Obviously, the potential need for increased costs. That's why there was the Value for Money Exclusion Act. There may be an additional need for professional services or additional costs because now we're needing to identify the major goods and services within a project. There's some smaller, I would say around $100,000 construction projects that sometimes municipalities would take care of themselves. Not always the case that they would be able to identify all the major goods or come up with a percentage for the commitment approach. So there may be some external help needed. Longer delivery times, obviously, as it pertains to vehicles, but in terms of any procurement situation, because essentially by implementing the Buy Ontario Act, we're limiting our supplier pool. Development of a domestic supply chain plan. It's going to be more cumbersome for the smaller contractors that are within the county. Reason being is that they need to identify where all the goods and services is, and it's obviously easier for larger corporations to be able to handle that and have the staffing to do it. As we've been talking to our contractors, they also need to change the way that they're doing bids and tenders, because ultimately when they are submitting a tender, they're often leaving it till the 11th hour to negotiate with their subcontractors. Obviously, if they're leaving it till the 11th hour, they can't update their domestic supply chain plan and ultimately submit a bid on time. We've considered the option of allowing a domestic supply chain plan to get submitted following tender closing to allow them to continue to negotiate until the bid closes. But the problem that we foresee potentially running into is that if there's a bidder that is close to being the low compliant tender, they may misinterpret where their goods and services are coming from in order to get that 10% advantage and win the tender. In relation to that, importantly, when they first communicated this act coming out, there was some talk that municipalities would also have to verify the source of these goods and services when a tender closes, which you can imagine would be extremely cumbersome for staff. The province did listen as it pertains to that, and municipalities can take what a vendor submits as verbatim. So recommendations moving forward, staff at the township actually do a really good job of this. Just please get us involved as soon as possible, and third-party engineers. It obviously takes a lot more time to put together the tenders and identify the major goods and services. Prepare for longer bid processes. Contractors are really just learning about the act, and as well as our third-party professionals, really. There wasn't a lot of communication outside of municipalities about it. We've been doing a lot of education sessions with our third-party engineers and architects. And anytime that a tender is going out now, again, because it's new, we're issuing an addendum immediately with big bold letters. The Buy Ontario Act applies, and this is how. Please refer to this section of the tender document so everybody's aware. And we're getting a lot of questions from contractors on that. Again, when procuring external professional services, when you have your section as it pertains to assisting with the tendering RFP process. Just ensure that you're incorporating that they must be well versed in the Buy Ontario Act and that their tender documents would apply to it. And then again, obviously, as best practices are developed, we'll be sharing them with our local municipalities, which we have been. I have attended the countywide public work services meeting when they've all received this presentation. Various municipalities and SLTs have also been given this information, and as new information becomes available, as I'm expecting a lot of contractors and of those third-party engineers to voice their concerns with the province, I'm expecting a lot of changes, and those changes will be communicated accordingly. So with that, that's the presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions of council.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that, Josh. A lot of information there for sure, and I can see why you started your presentation by saying this was the most significant legislation that you've had to deal with in your career. So thank you for that. Questions or comments from council at this time? Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, if I may. Thank you for the presentation. I just have a couple of questions. Slide 18, you're talking about the increased costs because of the incentives that are given and the delays that may be caused for municipalities. I'm just wondering, how are those costs covered? Is that something the municipality is going to have to pick up? I guess that's my first question, because I'm just thinking I'll go into my second question, but that's the first question. So yeah.
Yes, so through the mayor to the councillor, yes, that's the intent, is that the municipalities would be picking this up and that these costs would be accounted for during the budget period, obviously prior to tendering or going out to market for these items.
So if I can just have another question. So does this process, does this exclude competition, quality of service? It sounds to me like once this starts rolling, people are just not going to bid anymore. If you know what I'm saying, because we've had companies that I'm sure I completely understand the legislation. I get that part, but I'm just wondering about the quality of service, the workmanship that we get. If we've got, 5 people or 5 companies bidding on something, all of a sudden now we're only going to get 2. How does that affect us?
Again, through the mayor to the councillor, so from a number of supplier standpoint, as it pertains to our construction locally, it's 99.9% Canadian companies who are doing the work. So from that aspect, it's not an issue. We were concerned about the same, and we're going to monitor the situation. That said, as I mentioned, we've had a few bids go out now that fall under the capital infrastructure policy specifically, and the number of bids have not decreased as per normal as of yet. And that's taking into account that this was at the end of construction season when schedules are already pretty full. That said, we are trying to do our best to give longer tendering timeframes to help our contractors be able to put together bids and times, as well as educate them well in advance during the tender phase. It's a little bit of a strange situation because a lot of people aren't aware of the nuances of the act and how they apply and things of that nature. And truthfully, when we have a bid go out, there is a lot of legal language, and rightfully so, to protect the municipality and the contractors during the tender phase. They'll see that the Buy Ontario Act applies, but do they really go delve deep into it? And hence, one of the reasons what we're trying to do is identify such during the addendums and educate during the addendums. It's not our standard questions and answers situation now. We're actually explaining the Buy Ontario Act publicly within our addendums to give contractors more information. And we're actually, and during the tendering process as well, I would say normally we restrict all communication to go through bids and tenders, questions and answers. We're fielding a lot of calls in regards to the Buy Ontario Act and how it applies. And of course, we're providing that information to all bidders during a tendering process. But we're picking up the phone when they're calling and answering their concerns. So I guess that's a long-winded answer. Everything's kind of to be seen once the tendering season picks up in early 2027. But so far, at least, all our contractors are still hungry for work, it would appear, and they're all willing to satisfy the requirements of this act, at least for the time being.
All right. Okay. Thank you. I'm good. Thanks.
Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Josh, for the presentation. That was very comprehensive and a lot of information there. Does this also apply, and apologies if it says it in your presentation, does it also apply to services, like if we were working with an engineering consultant, for example, if they're an international firm based in the US, but they have an office here in Ontario with, staff that are Ontarians, is that affected by this?
Thank you. Through the mayor to the councillor. So at a very high level, no. So if we were procuring just engineering services, that does not fall under the Buy Ontario Act for municipalities. It actually falls under that other act, the public sector initiative, like all the other entities beyond municipalities, interestingly. Now, some municipalities do a design and build procurement. And if that is the case, then the Buy Ontario Act requirements fall under that. But again, that is for the major goods and services as it pertains to the construction. So you're not necessarily looking at the engineering aspects of it, but it's factored into the bid as a whole.
Okay, thank you. I got a couple other questions. When you talked about the fleet vehicle policy and there was that list of the made in Ontario vehicles, sort of the tier one, and then the Ontario vehicle producers that are involved in the supply chain. And the example of the Chevrolet Silverado being the only pickup truck that's made in Ontario, could a municipality, or do you expect, would they procure directly saying, we want to buy a Silverado? Is that allowed, or do you sort of have to keep it open and just have that as like a preference in your scoring sort of thing?
Yeah, so interestingly, the county is actually about to go out to market for our first in the coming weeks. As it pertains to the Buy Ontario Act, there's two ways we can word it. One, we can say it's built in Ontario, but everybody knows that there's only one pickup truck that has a VIN number that starts with the number 2. So theoretically, we could specify it because we're not giving preference, we're just following the act. So the way we're writing the documents, or at least the way we intend to write the documents, is to tackle the operationally feasible item that I mentioned. We're going to stay, this is our vehicle, as long as it falls within budget and you can deliver it within 3 months. Our first preference is to go with the made in Ontario vehicle, as the act states that we should. Then we're going to ask for a secondary quote that says basically, if you can't meet this requirement, what can you do for that tier 2 vehicles? And then we'll provide the list as the province provides on their website, and ask for a quote as it pertains to that.
Okay, thank you. And my last question, just thinking about sort of the big construction projects that we do, municipal infrastructure, pipes in the ground, building roads, facilities and playgrounds and stuff like that. What are some of the key materials that are going to be impacted by this? Like, is it the plastic pipe, concrete, what is coming from Ontario? And where do we have to sort of go, beyond the borders to get some materials?
I would say through the mayor to the councillor, I would say the majority of the materials we're finding solutions that they are coming from Ontario. So it is the plastic pipe, concrete, dirt, backfill, steel, things of that nature. I actually believe the first item that I did under the Buy Ontario Act, I assisted the Director of Public Works at the Township for corrugated pipe for the wastewater treatment plant. That was all sourced from Ontario. So we're seeing a lot of the vendors find Ontario-made sources for goods and services, and truthfully so, in a lot of our contracts that we've previously had prior to the act, the majority of goods and services that we receive have been coming from Ontario. Of course, there's items that we cannot get from Ontario, but I would be willing to state that the vast majority of goods and services that we already receive for construction projects are coming from the province of Ontario.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. I think it's good, like just a comment, this was something it was kind of top of mind, I don't know, a year ago or several months ago. And I think it's still important, and it's a good step that the province is making. And, it's going to be some administrative burden that has to be managed. But thankfully, we have our great procurement services from the county. So thanks, Josh.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hodgins, any other comments or questions? It's interesting, Councillor Hodgins, brought up about how it's top of mind, and I don't even know if you would know this, Josh, but I'm just wondering, like, have other provinces followed this suit as well to have, like the Buy British Columbia Act for British Columbia municipalities, and then of course, then the next step and the caveat to this is, as we know, negotiations are going on, and you just wonder how all of this will play into what's next. But I just didn't know if there was, if you know, if this is a trend across Canada.
So we're hearing provinces are considering. Ontario is the kind of the first province to really step forward and say, you know, for all encompassing construction projects, this policy would apply, so on and so forth. There's specific items that have been excluded at other provinces. And I think too, and it was probably required by the province to come in and make some legislation, because we had a situation where some municipalities were making their own determination in terms of how they're going to proceed with by Ontario, by Canadian versus US or elsewhere. So having that legislation in place was probably required so that all municipalities were on the same playing field, and that it was very clear how municipalities should operate as it pertains to obtaining Canadian and Ontario made goods and services. So.
No, I agree. I mean, I remember when all this happened, there was a lot of municipalities that were passing, motions, but it wasn't as easy to do. So I think this legislation is great. And I mean, like, I just think going forward, regardless of what happens, it is a great, policy and template for municipalities to follow. Ron, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank Josh and his staff and the county for sort of picking up the mantle on this one. If we were left on our own to do this kind of thing, it would be quite difficult, and I don't know how we do it, to tell you the truth. So thank you very much to Josh and your staff for helping us out. We certainly try and use you sparingly, but your service is very valuable. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Echo what Ron said, Josh. I know from talking to staff, obviously they've always appreciated the work that you've been able to support them in. So thank you for that. Thanks for coming this morning. And you're welcome to stay, but I know that you've got other stuff going on. So thanks very much. With that, I just ask for a motion to receive that presentation for information, please. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan, all in favor, and that's carried. Okay, moving forward, we have the set of minutes in front of us from July 14th. If anything needs to be questioned or changed, let me know. Otherwise, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to approve those as circulated. Councillor Hodgins and Deputy Mayor Manders, all in favor, and that's carried. Onto the consent agenda, there's a number of items that we've got in front of us. Nothing's been asked of me to pull, but I'm seeing the Deputy Mayor. You want to?
Yeah, I wanted just to ask on 8.1, the Parks and Rec activity report, just on the swings for Spencer. I was just more curious because it's fairly new there. Is that just an addition of swings, or there wasn't swings, or just anyways, I was just curious on that.
Through the mayor, yeah, that is a addition of swings. It was something that's brought up at the budget process. It was in the budget survey a couple of times that people were looking for, because there's just the one disc swing, and they were looking for a set of swings. So it was approved during the budget process that the swing set would be added to Spencer.
Yeah, so just nothing removed. Yeah, good. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hodgins.
Just pull a few more items, if I may, or I'll speak to several of them at once. There's several items dealing with Conservation Authority amalgamation. So 8.4 through 8.7 I'll speak to. So 8.4 just deals with ABA staffing announcement. So our general manager at ABCA, Davin Heinbuck, he has been appointed to be the project executive at the Western Lake Erie Regional Conservation Authority. So the new entity that's taking UTRCA and Essex and other conservation authorities. He's going to be leading that the transition and then becoming the inaugural CAO. So he has officially had to have stepped down from his role as the GM at ABCA, and Nathan Schollier is acting GM currently. And then 8.5 deals with the transition committee members. So we still have 2 regional CAs once the transition happens. So we're going to be split between the Lake Huron Regional CA and the Western Lake Erie Regional CA. And then our representatives, we still have some representation through ABCA. So there's a counselor from Huron East from ABCA, the chair, who's going to be sitting on the transition committee in Lake Huron, as well as Nathan, the new GM. And then for the Western Lake Erie region from UTRCA, Tracy Annette, the general manager, and Brian Petrie from the town of Ingersoll will be sitting on those transition committees. And then 8.6 deals with that there's some new regulations coming out for how they decide representation on those the new regional conservation authorities. And they have huge memberships, like the Western Lake Erie Regional Conservation Authority. Middlesex will have one seat. It's based on population. But then the larger centers like London and Windsor and Essex will have 3 seats, but 22 members. And then similarly with Lake Huron, Middlesex is going to have 1 seat at that, and that'll be the county who will have that. So lots of information there, but just wanted to highlight some of that because lots happening with the conservation authorities. And if anyone has any questions or wants me to take anything back to ABCA, I'd be happy to. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Hodgins. You're absolutely right. There's lots there, and it seems every day we're getting something with regards to conservation authorities. Any questions on that? Just, I think, take back to, I mean, I think it's already started, but that is, congratulations to Devin on getting that position. That is significant and well done on his part. So congratulations on that. Any other items to speak to? I just might highlight 8.8 and the reappointment of the Source Protection Committee. And that's Matt Pearson. Of course, we all know him from his work with BM Ross, and that's a reappointment as the chair, but congratulations to Matt on that. Okay, if there's nothing else, then I would ask for a mover and a seconder to receive those items for information, please. Councillor Regan and Deputy Mayor Manders. All in favor? And that's carried. On to correspondence, and Councillor Regan, you wanted to speak to one of the items.
If I may, Madam Mayor, for 9.4, it was a resolution from the town of Whitby regarding OLT, the land or the tribunal. And I attached that. I sent an email just to, I would like to propose a motion in support. A number of times that we've had discussions about how as a municipality, as elected officials, we sometimes, I won't use the word ignored, but maybe that's what we are, is we have our official plans. We have we live in the community. We know what our community needs and how, and our decisions and sort of our feelings about how, what it should look like and how it should develop. And I've said before, sometimes feel like we've lost some power in that regard. So this resolution from Whitby basically says that, elected councils are elected to make planning decisions that reflect the needs and priorities of their communities. And I believe what they're trying to do is just sort of get the province to sort of understand that we still have that input. We still need to have that input. And we still need to have that recognized, sort of no decisions about us without us kind of thing. So there's 2 resolutions that they've made. One was just to ask the Ontario government to request to review the role and mandate of the Ontario Land Tribunal to ensure greater respect for the municipal planning decisions that are supported by evidence, public consultation, and approved planning policies. And number 4 was that the province explore measures to reduce the financial burden on municipalities in defending these planning decisions. So I was just going to ask for a motion of support for that going forward, if I may.
Okay, just so that I'm clear, a motion, do you want to have a motion of support for the whole motion that Whitby passed, or just those
Oh,
two
for the whole motion, I just highlighted those 2 just to make my point. So.
Okay, so you don't want us, like, you don't want Tina to bring back this motion for us. You just want to support this one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, just some clear things.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, before we put that on the
Yeah.
floor, I'll just say, is there any discussion on that or any questions? Yeah.
It is an interesting read, obviously, and what frustrates me is that, even, and I support this, to support this resolution, but at the end of the day, this is one resolution. I don't think will we ever know the outcome. It's just a feel good resolution to me, and it does go to show how much control we have, that we do lose once it goes to the OLT. But again, I'm in support of it, but it's disappointing actually to read that that's, they have their goals and then municipalities have their goals, and we get, because our municipality has our goals, we do get, seems like overrun by the province goals.
Any other comments on that? I would suggest that, I echo your concerns, Deputy Mayor, but, we are traveling to AMO, and there will be opportunity for us to, see in various situations, members of the opposition and, to push them, when and if the House ever sits again, to question them in question period about this, So, I would suggest when we notify whoever to make sure that, the housing critic for the official opposition and the housing critic for the Liberals get CC'd on that as well, so that they can kind of see the discussion.
No, I was just gonna say it would be a good bear pit question.
It would be a good bear pit question, so perhaps maybe you want to form that and, get in line for the
I will
bear
be in
pit.
line for it.
I'll have the video going. You should, honestly.
Yes,
Good.
ma'am.
Okay, so you're gonna make that motion to support the Whitby motion, and a seconder for that, please. The Deputy Mayor. Any further discussion on that? All in favor? And that's carried.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Were there any other items of correspondence that council want to speak to? Okay, so just okay, so then the motion in front of us for the correspondence is that council receive and file correspondence items 9.1 through 9.3 and then 9.5. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Westman. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, on to committee reports. You'll have in front of us the draft minutes from the Biddulph Blanchard Fire Board minutes. I don't know, Chief, I don't think there's anything to add to that. If there's any questions, we're happy to answer them. Okay, seeing none. Anything from Blue Water?
No.
Anything from conservation authorities?
Yeah, just briefly, we did meet on July 16th, certainly continuing to discuss Davin's move. And we looked at also, a draft master plan for the Morrison Dam Conservation Area and some various other operational matters.
Right, thank you for that. Lake Huron, I don't have anything. However, tomorrow, no, Thursday, the board is being taken for a tour of the facility. I've done it before, but the exciting thing about that is that we are going to have representatives from Oneida Nation of the Thames there. And of course, we're involved in a transmission project where we're bringing water to Oneida. So it's exciting. So they're going to be able to meet with the board. This is the first time we will have met them outside of the signing of the agreement. I think it's a significant move. This is a significant project, not only for the Lake Huron primary water supply system, but for Oneida and our region. So really looking forward to that. Parks and Rec.
No new information to report, Madam Mayor.
Trails and connectivity. Economic development.
We are meeting on the 25th of August, at 6 o'clock here.
Thank you very much. Okay, staff reports. Ron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The first report is the one on organizational review. It's number CAO 10-2026. It was included in your package. Council may recall back in the spring, or actually late last fall, during the budget, we did set aside $25,000 for an organizational review. It became apparent once we saw the submissions that 25,000 wasn't enough. I don't know that I was surprised to see that. I was surprised to see the number of submissions, which is a good thing. And we did have 16 submissions, and it was from coast to coast, like from Vancouver to Nova Scotia. So the actual, I guess, ranking of the proposals was done by Josh White and myself. We really focused on the ones obviously within our sort of closer to our price range. And once all the ranking was complete, Town Hall Consulting was the preferred one. The dollar amount on that one is 35,900. So it's again, it's $10,900 more than what we had budgeted for. However, in the overall scheme of things, 10,900 is not the end of the world. So the Town Hall Consulting is headed up by a gentleman by the name of Mr. Rob Adams. He's a well-known chief administrative officer here in Ontario. He's a former CAO of the year, so he's very well versed in all things administrative. He's also served as a warden, so he's served on both sides of the table. So he's got a very good handle on municipal work from both sides, from the elected side and from the administrative side. Again, very highly recommended. I spoke to a number of people in that regard that has done work with him. He is very well respected in his field. So again, my recommendation is to proceed. I think the question that is before council is whether we want to pull the trigger and move forward with the organizational review at this point in time, based on the submissions and the dollar value. So happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you for that, Ron. Comments, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I am concerned with proceeding. Again, you said it, you focused on the price range as opposed to the outcome and what we were truly submitted and asking for, and what the reason, what are, I just can't believe that 10 bids are 100% higher than our budget. And, that's incredible. And it's not like a building where you're tearing off the side. You don't know if there's mold or asbestos there. Our ask to have a 100% higher than what we thought it would cost. So again, are we going to get a crappy outcome from just focusing on the price range as opposed to what other people thought? And again, I like other decisions that I've said, like, we budgeted for that. $11,000 is not a lot of money, but for me, it's enough that we just budgeted for 2027 and say that this council was a priority. But it really concerns me the range of a simple ask of a small organization to have that bigger range, and the outcomes from all of them would be quite different. They'd have to be quite different. The outcomes, I don't know. It makes no sense. So that's why I'm not in favor of it.
Yeah, I think when I was going through my evaluation of all these submissions, a lot of the companies obviously are very large companies. You start talking, KPMG, for example, they're a very, very large company. And, I think that in and of itself inflates the costs. And like I said, I feel very comfortable with the Town Hall Consulting. They know our municipality. They're very familiar with the size of the municipality. They know what we need. And I feel comfortable, like I said, with my recommendation. But again, it's council's decision whether you want to proceed now or whether you want to budget for it properly and do it in 2027. That's really, in my mind, that's the question.
Okay, Any other comments? Councillor Hodgins?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. Yeah, I'm not sure, like looking ahead, if we did do it in 2027, would we get the same sort of results, same costs? My question is about timing and, when would be the ideal time to do this sort of review? Because I understand it's probably going to take a lot of staff time and, with kind of the summer and construction season, people being very busy. Do we have a timeline of when we'd want to do this? Like, irregardless of the RFP and awarding the contract, when's the ideal time?
So through the mayor to Councillor Hodgins, the timeline for town hall consulting, and I'll speak specifically about theirs, they would start almost immediately. And they would have the finished product delivered to council probably the first or second meeting in December. So it's quite, there's quite a stretch of time there because they do want to speak to members of staff. They want to speak to members of council. And it's going to take some time to do that. So, for example, the one submission, and I won't say who it was, they literally said they were going to do this whole project in 4 weeks, starting tomorrow. That doesn't cut it to me at all. So that one immediately was rejected. So I think with the one that I've recommended here, or the one that I feel most comfortable with, they have a good handle on it, and they know that it takes time, and they've set aside enough time to do it.
Okay, thank you. And from from the township's perspective and our staff and our capacity, to have the time to, sit down and do the interviews or however it works. Like that timeline works out for us too.
Well, I think we all internally, we're all looking forward to getting this done. So we will make the time to do it because we know we need it. So.
And just one other question. I'm not sure if we've ever, like when we do RFPs, whether we're permitted or if it has to be structured differently, but is there an opportunity to negotiate, to work out, whether that means changing the scope a little bit or, to bring it more within our budget? Are there things that are being proposed that aren't maybe necessary? Is there that opportunity?
Yeah, that's always a tricky one because if you start messing with the terms of the tender, the tender submission, you kind of you're monkeying with the way that you're scoring things. And I think that Josh, I can hear Josh in the back of my mind right now going, be careful, because if you change it substantially, then you're really starting over and you have to give everybody else the opportunity to do that as well.
Okay, that's all the questions I have.
Any other questions or comments? Yep.
Great, thanks. So I'm just kind of concerned, I guess, when I say concerned about the range of costs, but was the original $25,000, is that, maybe that's where maybe we should have said 50. I mean, I'm not just throwing that out there, but I'm just saying that maybe is why we've, the original kind of estimate and the original budget, maybe.
So through the mayor to Councillor Regan, we did get asked as part of the input questions, because there's an opportunity during the RFP process for the potential bidders to ask questions. One of the questions they wanted was, what is the budget? Well, we never want to give them the budget because that's what they're going to structure their number around. So they didn't have a number to start with. So I think that's why you're kind of getting the full range here. But again, I agreed with Josh, not with Josh's decision not to put that in there, because that really gives a target.
Well, that's, I'm sorry, I probably didn't ask that well. I'm just thinking what we budgeted, like the recommendation was to put aside $25,000 for this, right? That's my question. It wasn't about, I know we're not going to tell, it's not like when you go buy a car, you can say, how much do you have to spend? You're not going to tell them. So I got that.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying because if we said 25,000.
I think we originally had more in the initial budget, but that during a budget process, I think it got pared down to 25.
I'm just wondering whether the 25 was realistic or not. Because I don't know, I've never done consulting, so.
Well, I think based on the numbers that you see before you, that number wasn't correct. However, you know, it was reasonably close. I mean, 10,900 is pretty close.
All right, thanks.
It is interesting. Like, there is one from Nova Scotia that's in that same ballpark. So, yeah, anyways.
Yeah, and again, my concern more is, like Councillor Hodgins said, like we could be looking at something similar. You know, there just seems to be, again, my thoughts are some confusion on outcome and goals of this from seeing that wider range of tender, and that's my concern. If there would have been 16 bids at 35,000, I'd be in favor of taking from tax stabilization. My concern is, again, I'll buy a little bit of KPMG and Ron's comments, but not at a 100,000 down to our budget at 25,000. We thought it would cost to that, and that's again my concern is more what the goals of staff and I guess even council was to have this done to them completing that thorough enough. And again, my concern is just whether the request for proposal, if we push to 2027, is more clearly laid out, because I just don't feel there should be that big a range with 16 quotes. And as we can see, you can do it from all over. And that's, I just want to reiterate my concern.
Through you, Madam Mayor. The only thing I would say is if you look at the submissions there are 5 within, 30, 20, what was it, 28.9 was the low to 38,691. So you've got 5 bids within that range. So that's, I would have been okay if we just got 5 bids, and if those were the 5, then it would look a lot different. This whole report would look a lot different. But yeah, when you get one at 104,000, you kind of wonder, okay, are we talking about the same product? And that's, yeah. Yeah.
Any other? Yeah, Councillor Hodgins.
Yeah, no, just add, so I'm supportive of the recommendation to move forward with it. And I think it is, somewhat the nature of the work that we see that sort of spread. And, it's a lot of, Toronto and Halifax and Vancouver, maybe some of those big urban centers that really kind of have those standout big numbers. But, further to Ron's comments there are, a tighter range of submissions as well. And we did get a lot of submissions to evaluate. So, and with Ron's comments, I'm supportive of the recommendation to move forward.
Thank you. Any other comments before? Yeah, Councillor Westman.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. I know during the budget process, we were looking at where we could trim and what we needed to do to get our numbers down. And I understand the process. I mean, we've had services not unlike this over the years. I'm in support of it, but I think going forward, that we need to really take a harder look at budget time to see what we should be putting in the numbers, right? It's not always about just trimming things down. Sometimes it's about function, right? So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you for that. So I'm supportive of the recommendation. Obviously, if you recall at budget time, I was very much in favor of going through this process, that I thought it's something that we haven't done formally. And I just feel in listening to staff and the needs and how kind of departments have changed over the years, that this would be a good process to go and to have a third party do it. Consultants are it's an interesting business, because I do think no matter when you ask for consultant, if you put out an RFP for consultants, you are going to get quite a range. I can't remember specifically, but I dare say when we went through the Fire Master Service Plan, it was the same thing. You get a whole array of budgets, and a lot of it does, I think, we can say it flippantly, but I think a lot of it does have to do, with having big boys come and put a proposal in front of you, that they do bring a higher dollar value. We just had our procurement manager here, and it's a great service that he brings to our municipalities. But in doing so, and the process that that department uses when advertising for this, it does open the door if we much wider than if we had done it ourselves. Like I dare say if we had advertised for it, I'm not convinced that, the group from Vancouver would have been putting a submission in to come do the project in Lucan. But anyway, so I am supportive. I do believe we need to go forward with it. I think it's important to remember, I know, we have an election, change in council and everything, but I do think that this sort of process provides a template for going forward. And again, if we liken it to the fire service master plan, it'll be a step-by-step guide. It will become a document that is used during budget time. You can decide how you want to implement it. So I think it's time to do it. We're in the process of getting ready to go through the budget process. And I just think that this document will only support it. And to me, it's a good time to go ahead. So those are my 2 cents. Any other comments or questions? So you do have a recommended motion in front of you, and I would look for a mover and a seconder for that, or unless there was something else. Councillor Hodgins for the motion. A seconder for that, please. Councillor Westman. And any further discussion? All in favor of the motion in front of us? So that's 3, and that is carried. Okay. Thank you. I think Tina's going to do the next ones. Did you have anything else that you want to add? No. Okay, Tina.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. I won't talk about this too much as it's kind of self-explanatory. A lot of it's in the report and the example or the report attached that Dirk had provided to the county earlier this year. But basically, the County Planning Service Department is updating our planning services agreement. The planning environment has become more complex due to increased development, new policies, and advances in technology. Nothing is changing with our agreement. However, we are getting enhanced level of services. As you're all aware, we do have 2 planners from the county that provide services to us, and they are now in the office 2 days a week, with one coming in on Tuesdays and one coming in on Wednesday. Plus, they are also available 5 days a week by phone or email. So the agreement, staff does have delegated authority to execute the agreement, but it is there for information. If there's any questions, Ron or I can answer, or our planning staff could answer as well.
Okay, thank you, Tina. Questions on the agreement in front of us, comments? Okay. All right, that was easy. Then you've got the motion in front of you to receive the report for information, please. A mover and a seconder, Councillor Westman and Deputy Mayor Manders. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, the next one in front of us is the fireworks bylaw, and I believe that the chief is going to take this one.
At present, we do not have a fireworks bylaw at all. We were always relying on the noise bylaw. This here bylaw basically gives rules and regulations to fireworks in the municipality. And it's just a start. It's our first one, so it's very general. There's a lot of areas in it are there for a lot of expansion and growth in the community. But do you have any questions on the bylaw itself, or?
Deputy Mayor.
I assume this will create a lot of education, which is good. And typically this incident that happens, I'm thinking that usually, when it was noise bylaw, now with this firework bylaw, that it'll be something that'll be investigated typically the days or days after, just because I think it's hard to react within the fireworks setting. Yep. So I think it's good if it's again, good education, good awareness for the neighbors. It's obviously multiple pages. I'm not sure if Lisa will be able to put something more condensed, like on that there is a new bylaw and what it represents, because certainly I've had the odd complaint from neighbors, but then afterwards they say, well, it's over and there's no sense, calling on a noise complaint, where this at least, I think will better educate our community unfortunately after the incident. Yeah, probably after the incident.
I think this falls in line a lot when we started the burn permit process. There are fines and everything involved in the burn permit process. That took about 2 years, and it was more through education. When there was an issue, we'd always bring it up. We didn't always, come in with a fine or whatever. It was educating people. And now at this time, everybody seems to have bought in with it. They're getting their permits if they burn and that, and it'll be the same with the fireworks bylaw. It's basically just to educate them. We don't want to start in, writing tickets and everything else. That eventually will come because there are people that just won't listen. But at this time, it'll be brought forward more and presented with education. And there is things in it that through that process, we may end up changing, but
Yeah.
it's our first one and it's a start, and it gives us something then that we can react to and even develop further. But it will start out through education more than anything. So.
Any other comments?
Just.
Yep.
I will just add to that staff do receive calls from the public more now, asking if we do have a fireworks bylaw. So it is a good tool to be able to, send on to them and say, yes, there is a bylaw in place. Instead of before, we would tell them that they're permitted on Canada Day and Victoria Day and it falls under our noise bylaw. But now we can actually provide them the bylaw and the information in it. And as Ron said, continue to educate that way.
Anything else? I just wondered, I'm Deputy Mayor did touch on it, but I just wondered if we have contemplated a communications plan for this and how that is going to be rolled out, so that we can ensure that now everybody knows that we do actually have some teeth in it.
That is something we could post, that there is a bylaw in effect. Well, once it's approved is in effect now, we could put that on the sign, and basically it was the same as we did with the burn permits, and they can read it. And
I guess I just, it's August. Sometimes maybe on Labor Day, you might get some people
Yeah.
that send fireworks off, end of summer. But traditionally, you see it more into spring, around Victoria Day or in between Victoria Day and Canada Day. And so we'll post it now and we'll do that, but we can't lose sight of that. Again, maybe revisiting that in the spring when people are more apt to, just want to make sure we keep on top of that. Okay. Okay, if there's no other discussion on that, the motion in front of us is that we receive the report for information and we direct staff to bring forward a finalized fireworks bylaw for adoption at the next regular council meeting, and further that staff be directed to proceed with the approval of the set fines scheduled by the Chief Justice of Ontario Court of Justice. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Regan. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, anything else from the clerk's department or anything?
No, not at this time.
Okay, we have with us today representatives from Building and Bylaw. Arnie and Dan have joined us. They're just making their way to the speaker's desk. It's great to have you here this morning. Thank you for coming. And I will turn it over to you for the first report, which is the second quarter 26 building report.
Thank you, Mayor, and good morning, Council. We're pleased to be here today. First report we present is the first half report, focusing largely on the activity of the second quarter of what we've seen this year. It's a very good news report. Some key indicators have gone very well this year compared to previous years. This year we've gone up from 22 new dwelling units to 46 new approved dwelling units, and permits from 69 permits up to 87, with construction value from 33 million up to 44. Construction value, there was a large chunk of construction value associated with the sewage plant upgrades in Lucan. Don't want to deceive that too much. That does come into play, but generally very good indicators we're seeing with housing starts and permits in general. In the report, I provide 3 tables. The first table outlines what we've seen specifically in the second quarter and the first half, and compares it to first half totals of last year. Things that might jump out to council is the 32 new townhouse units we've seen in the first half this year compared to 12 last year. That's the biggest indicator in this report that I think council will notice. There's also a breakdown of different types of permits we see from sheds, decks, pools, demolition permits, everything that requires a building permit is kind of summarized in its own category here. The second table summarizes a comparison of the first half to the previous 4 years. We'd like to just give a 5-year review of what we've seen and how they compare to each other. Again, construction value this year is at 44 million, and that's the highest we've seen in the previous 4 years in comparison. And the third table in the report compares the municipalities that are in our service agreement. We provide inspection services to 6 municipalities in Middlesex County. Generally, it's been a good first half, or a very good first half for some. Of note, you'll see Lucan Biddulph, again, number of new dwellings up to 46 from 22. You also notice in North Middlesex, they're up to 83 new dwellings from 41. So it's been a really good year in North Middlesex, primarily to a new condo development that's in Park Hill. I think it's a 35-unit condo. They got all their permits in the first half this year. So they're continuing on with their strong growth. But the other municipalities as well, Southwest has doubled their new dwellings, and Middlesex Center is up as well. So generally, it's a good report. Things are up across the county, which is really good news, and they're trending that way still. Speaking of some home builders, that there is some confidence in the market now with HST rebates, and demand is good. So if there's any questions about this, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you for that. And yes, this is a good report. I know when I opened it up, I went, wow, wasn't necessarily expecting that. So that was good. When you put numbers on paper, yeah, it's quite startling. Any comments or questions on this particular report? Nope. I'm just going to ask. I mean, I think I've asked it for the last couple reports, but just on, has there been any at least conversations about ARUs? I know we haven't obviously issued any, but and I would say, you know, not just obviously in Lucan Biddulph, but across the municipalities that you serve.
Yes, thank you, through the mayor. I wanted to follow up on a couple of questions that you had at a previous meeting. I wasn't here too. So the County of Middlesex ran an RFP for standard drawings for 4 or 5 various ARUs. And we've created a working group. That RFP has been awarded, and there's a working group of the 3 CBOs in Middlesex County. That's Thames Center, myself, and Strathroy Caradoc CBOs, plus a couple of building inspectors from Middlesex Center. We've met with the architect that won the contract, and we're looking for I'm going to say 4 or 5. It's a big difference sometimes, but let's say 5 standard drawings that will be accepted anywhere in Middlesex County. The architect will prepare these 5 designs, sorry, of varying styles, but something that we would see anywhere across the county. That our residents can say, I want to build this one, and they can go straight to building permit. It's been reviewed by building division, and they can get their building permits right away. There'd be no cost to them for these drawings. So it's a big savings for people that want a standard looking ARU in their backyard, whether it be in urban centers, subdivisions, or out in the rural areas. A couple of varying sizes and designs that we're looking at. We hope to have that done by the end of this year. And there is demand. It's increasing demand. It has been quiet in Lucan Biddulph. It's been quiet generally everywhere. We've seen a small handful across our service area, but they're coming for sure. So we want to create something that people can use going forward. Again, standard designs. They'll use the most stringent snow loading that you might have in Park Hill, and that design will be used in Dorchester and Wardsville, where it's not quite the snow loading, but just a standard design for everybody to use. So if I follow up on another question council had at a previous meeting about development charges. And traditionally, building division would report DCs as part of our report. And we've taken that out. I may put it back in. DCs are now tracked. There's varying payment opportunities for builders. They can defer development charges to occupancy. Development charges can be paid for rental properties over 5 years in 6 equal payments. And some DCs are paid straight up. So it can be complex in reporting them to council as part of a building report. So we could work with Treasury to find out a better, more accurate way of providing, the status of development charges, what's owing, what's been received each year. But before I present something, I'd probably like to talk to Treasury about the best way to bring that to council, about what's owing this year, coming years.
Perfect. Thank you for that. You had a question, Deputy Mayor?
Just put you on the spot a little bit. Just on the ARUs, just on those, is there any average cost that you could say, these are not of just a unit, like of an install price? Because we see, construction value and stuff like that, but on what you're designing, so that's a bit of a savings. But is it like 350,000? Because you obviously have your sewer, your water, or your hookups, things like that. So things do vary. But I guess in a municipality where there is all services, if someone was just to say, what should someone consider with the building of the house, connecting of services, fees, everything, 500,000, 400,000, 300,000? I'm just wondering what you would say.
Through the mayor, and acknowledging it, he's putting me on the spot. We will know more at the end of this year, because I think we'll get some estimates from the architect. COPS Biddulph in Hyde Park. I'm not promoting anyone, but I know COPS does provide ARUs for sale, starting in the high 100,000s. So 150 to 200,000, you can get an ARU from COPS. That's a package. I suspect what we'll see is anywhere from 180 to 250 installed. Yeah.
It was like around 350 total price potentially. If someone asked for a budgetary price, then for the purchase plus install and
I think
services.
that would be more than enough.
Yeah. I was just, potentially.
Significantly. Yeah. And maybe if you ask me at the end of this year, first quarter next year. And
That would be interesting. And then the other thing was on one report, I've noticed it, and maybe you've decided not to, and I've seen it in other municipalities where building permits, where the address, not the people's names, have been listed, just so that people know that they've gotten a building permit for their, pool, or, just in case neighbors are wondering, or people in general, and or the building department for that matter. And is that something, am I mistaken, you did? Because I thought I saw it in one report, don't see it in this one. Is this something you decided not to do, or you will do in the future?
Yeah, through the mayor, 100% we can provide that quarterly. Yeah, apologize for not getting that this report. It's a new ask. The ask actually came in Southwest Middlesex to us, and you have asked as well here before. So we will get into the routine of providing that to you.
Yeah. No, and I thought that was interesting. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's everything. Thanks.
Great. Any other questions of Arnie on this report? Okay, seeing none, then the motion is just to receive that report for information. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Westman. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, the bylaw enforcement report, and I think Dan's doing this one, or are you doing this one? Oh, Arnie's going to do it. Oh, you're just here to look pretty. I know, to support, right? The muscle. Okay. Oh, thanks, Arnie.
Yeah. Okay. Through the mayor, and we absolutely, Dan is here for Dan. I tip my hat to Dan. Dan assisted, pretty much wrote this report for us. So since 2012, Middlesex Center has been providing bylaw enforcement services to Lucan Biddulph. We've recently expanded that over the last couple of years to include Adelaide Metcalfe. And we're also helping North Middlesex out from time to time. Through our building inspectors are also bylaw enforcement officers. And we found that it's very efficient, since we're out and about doing inspections, that we can assist other municipalities as well. But this report primarily, again, we're here in Lucan Biddulph, and since 2012, we've been providing this service to you. pleased to provide this information. What we've seen this year is generally it's another positive report in that the activities you'll see in the tables of the report, things have gone down a bit. Less issues, less complaints. We've issued 3 provincial offenses notice and 1 summons in response to some activities. And we've totaled 18 new calls that staff have responded to this year. Those are file started. There's sometimes several back and forths, multiple visits and negotiating with people. But 18 new files that we started this year. In the first table of the report, we summarize generally what those calls are in real general sense, and also what we've seen, how those compare to year-end totals of the similar complaint. So for example, in the top of the report, animal control calls, we've had 4 new complaints this year. Year-end last year was 6, year-end 2024 was 10. And so the table kind of shows where we are mid-year this year and how it compares to previous years. The totals this year, again, it was 8. We're at 18 new files started in comparison to year-end last year was 62. And at the bottom of the report, you'll see just a sort of a bar graph outlining, again, where we're finding those complaints, what we're seeing. So following that, we're happy to answer any questions staff or council may have for staff.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
I agree. This is a great report. This is really good to see, the respect hopefully our neighbors are having with each other in our community. It's hopefully it continues to go down and not, needed as much. That's really good to see. The only thing I think that the real frustrating thing in our community that I hear lots of, which is hard to control, is that when people park past the parking spot at the intersection, just say by the Bank of Montreal, and they're not in their parking spot, and you got to go out so far into the highway to turn left or right and either side. And I know, you guys do what you can do when you're going by, but that's just such a danger and a frustration when people don't take the time to park in a parking spot as opposed to, right at the end. But no, that's a great report. So thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Let's just hope our community continues to be so well behaved. So yeah, thanks very much for coming. That's great. With that, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to receive that report for information. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you again for coming, gentlemen. It was great to see you, and we'll see you in a couple months. Okay, moving on to finance. Catherine, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The first report I have is regards to the moving towards the prudent investment standard and investments in general. You remember we had the meeting in June where the team from One Investment came and did a little presentation, and council had opportunity to ask a lot of questions about moving forward, and then gave staff direction to proceed with developing the investment policy and the bylaw and the agreements and all those things that go with it. So this report is sort of, so to speak, phase 2 of that process. So the investment policy that's presented, we just had to fill in determine what our M&RI is that we would want to turn over to One Investment to utilize. And I think we came up with or suggesting to use nothing that's required in 2 years. That's standard for municipalities our size. And we set that. So, and every year the investment policy is reviewed by council, so you can always make changes. And this investment policy, because we don't have one previously, also covers the legal list and also prudent investments. So we can move forward with that. And attached is all the investment policy that we're proposing, along with a draft or what the agreement could look like. And then some other information that, and the bylaws later in the council package as well, authorizing So the mayor and the clerk to proceed with the agreement. Once we have the meeting with One Jib has their quarterly meeting in November. And just to consider us if they want to accept us in the prudent investment standard. So that's all I have to really say more about that. If you have any questions, I'm here. I also invited the team from One Investment to join at this time if you have any questions to them at this time as well.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Catherine. I will look to council if council's got any comments or questions on what's in front of us. Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, I was going to ask about future reporting back to council and getting investment updates. And I think I may have seen it in the agreement that's attached that it's annual, but maybe to Catherine or to the people from One. Can you just confirm the reporting and how that reporting gets delivered to council?
Yeah, happy to do that through Catherine and then the chair. The reporting to the investor is monthly. There's also a year-end annual report, but the reporting back to council, that's actually a requirement of the Municipal Act that it's at least annually. So that would be through the treasurer through an annual investment update. But we're happy to support that with pre-produced reporting and anything else that's required.
Great, thank you very much for that. And then maybe I'll just ask about the MNRI or the money not required immediately. So we landed on 2 years, and I think that's okay. Like it's is it correct that like taking a lower number like 2 years versus 5 years or 10 years, it's sort of taking less risk because we might need that money. And maybe if we're looking at a longer term horizon, we put like more risky investments. I understand that's up to the investment people. But just wanted to maybe get a bit more background on how we landed on 2 years and if we considered other options.
I can take that question. So 2 years is about standard of what the municipalities that have gone province have used. And it really goes along this term of money not required immediately. And from a legal opinion, right, if you get too far out in the future, then is it really immediate? It gets around the legal term of immediate. But given investment products in your investment plan will be tailored to your own municipal needs and when you're anticipating needing the funds to be used for various projects. So everything will be tailored based on your investment horizons.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Jennifer. That's all the questions I have.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? I guess I don't know who wants to take this one. I have 2 questions. One, I just am curious as to how the policy is developed. Is this just a standard policy or was it constructed, just for Lucan Biddulph? Did we do this in conjunction, like with like legal, that sort of thing? How did we get to what's in front of us today?
So from the one sorry, was Catherine going to answer that? Or?
I was just going to say I used the template that Run Investment provided, and it seems to be the standard that's used amongst the 21 municipalities that are joining. But Jason wants to add on to that, he can.
Yeah, no, actually, Catherine, you nailed it. I was just going to say that the law does not discriminate based on size or capacity of a municipality. It sets the rules for any municipality that becomes a prudent investor. So a template from our perspective is the best way to achieve that, with certain variables that the municipality then defines, i.e. the threshold for money not required immediately, funds that would be inside or outside of prudent investment, things of that sort.
Okay, thank you for that. And then I just had a question. It's on page 2 of the report with regards to the ministerial order. And who submits that? What's the process for that? Does that have to be in place before we're accepted at the annual meeting, or does that happen after the annual meeting? Just what all is the background on that?
don't, and that's in the bylaw? Sorry.
It's so on the page 2 of the report, there's a comment about once you adopt the prudent investment standard, you can only exit through a ministerial
Oh,
order. I think the
perfect.
questions
Yeah.
about that.
So there is no ministerial order until a time you wish, if you ever wished to revoke the prudent investment standard. So effectively what the law says is that you have to be a willing participant to move to this more robust investment approach. So staff can't do it without council saying we wish to do it. And it's intended to be effectively a one-way street that you council to council or year to year. Municipality is not going to say we're in and we're out and we're in and we're out. Because you're taking away the handcuffs that exist under the legalist approach or the traditional investment approach, and we're saying that a prudent investor will invest how a prudent person should invest, broadly diversified, etc. That if there was ever a time where a council said we wish to revoke a bylaw and move back to the legalist approach, effectively, I'm sure the ministry would ask for a plan to get you back to compliance with the legal list. So that's why revoking the bylaw under the law says that you have to get an order of the minister.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it. Any further discussion? Okay, I know that when Catherine presented it a few months ago, we had a fairly thorough discussion then. So with that, I would ask for a mover and a seconder for the recommended motion in front of us. I won't read the whole thing. It is a bit lengthy, so if anybody wants to see the wording, they can check the minutes or the agenda online for that. But a mover and a seconder for the motion that's recommended. Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Regan. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much, Catherine. And thank you for joining us this morning. Appreciate the support in that.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Okay, Catherine, you're still up.
Okay, thanks. My second report is for information. It's the update for the financials for the first half of 2026. I provided all the details in there as well as a summary and made some comments. So not considering seasonality, if you're halfway through the year, you should be halfway through your budget. But of course, there's a lot of seasonality to that as well. And it's hard to predict where we'll be at the end of the year, given all the transactions that happen for audit. But also included in the attachments is where we're at with the capital projects as of the end of July for your information as we move forward. And if you have any questions now, I can take them, but always know my door is open. If you have questions or residents have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Catherine. Any questions on this report in front of us today? Deputy Mayor?
This is going to come back to haunt me. But I was surprised at the 46% of winter budget. I thought it would have been higher. And just with our January, February, March we had this year, I was expecting, that we would have used 55, 60. Anyways, that's a pleasant surprise. And hopefully we don't have a winter in November and we just have a December winter and should be well within budget. That's probably one of my biggest surprises that I seen on there. Thank you. But again,
No, you said it. You've said it. And now it's on YouTube and you can't take it back. Any other comments? Okay, with that, thank you very much, Catherine. And I would ask for a mover and a seconder to receive that report for information, please. Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Westman, all in favor? And that's carried. Anything verbal to add, Catherine?
Yes, just wanted to mention two things. First, the final tax bills were produced and issued last week, so everybody should have them in their emails or in their mail. If you haven't, please let us know so we can get you a copy. And the first installment's due August 31st, and the second installment's due November 30th. They're both on the same bill. And secondly, the budget survey for 2027 consideration has been issued. You can access that through the website, or there's a link on the Facebook page as well. We did put, with the tax bills, we put, sent out both a PDF if you have by email and a physical copy of the budget information from 2026 that we had originally sent out in a March newsletter. And on the back of that was the information and the link for the budget survey. So that will close August 21st. So get your answers in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that update, Catherine. I'll just look at Dan if he's got any. What? Did you have a question? Oh, sorry. Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Councilor.
If I may, thank you, sorry. So just for Catherine, I just want to say how the survey, I was going to mention the survey and ask about that. Just, we have any results so far with how many people have actually engaged in that survey? And the second thing was that the attachment that came out with the bill was very well done. The charts and everything that you've designed for that, just to give people an idea of where all the money goes. I've received a number of compliments on that about just how clear that was. One of the things that was brought to my mind was the reserve, the 24% that we've had put in reserve, and people were very impressed with that. And two people actually mentioned to me, they didn't realize that we had done that, and they thought that was a great idea. So I just wanted to pass that along as well. So thank you for that. So.
Well, thank you. That was just a copy of the same thing that was sent out in a March newsletter as well. So we want to reiterate, like, bring it to attention again when the tax bills, because people might forget from when we passed the budget versus actually getting your bill regarding what we did. And as far as how many people have answered the survey, I'll defer that to Lisa because she has access to the Survey Monkey. But the other day she said we had quite a few already.
Right, good. Thank you very much.
Yes, to you, Madam Mayor, the survey actually has already surpassed what we maxed out last year. So it's been a great response so far.
That is excellent. Good news. Thanks for that. We have no planning. I don't think there's any updates from that department. Jeff, anything verbal from Public Works?
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a really quick, and I know everybody's aware that there's a fairly large repair taking place on the Lake Huron water supply pipeline. I'm saying that just an update for council that everything is going according to the plan and that our water supply is still fairly good. So everything's on course so far.
Great, thank you for that. Anything verbal from Parks and Recreation?
Through the mayor, no, just that our summer programs are all going well. It's a busy place at the community center, but we are happy to see all the faces come in and out every day. So everything's going well in Parks Rec.
I think when the office was closed down, that the people that work in this office may have a new appreciation for the busyness over at the arena, and could see firsthand the comings and goings of what summer looks like at the arena. So, yeah. Anything verbal, Lisa, for economic development?
Through you, Madam Mayor, nothing through economic development. I just do want a reminder that online voting changes for residents if they'd like to change their information or edit it or add it if they're not on there is deadlines tomorrow, online only. Of course, people can still do all those edits in person at the township office, but we are definitely promoting the online system to go on to Elections Ontario to check their information.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
So Lisa, just wanted to confirm there what you said. So if they're not on the voters list after tomorrow, they can't email to get on or call. They have to physically come to our township.
Yes, so you, Madam Mayor, that is correct. So they would actually have to come in and fill out a declaration form, an affidavit. So we would need people to come in and get that done. You can't do it over the phone or by email. We do need to see the person in here in the office, but obviously that can be done right up to voting day, right? They can come in even on voting day and advance voting to the actual day and fill out those forms and get added. But definitely it's easier to get them on the list and they can verify themselves versus coming in here.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Hey, any other election questions at this time? Okay. All right, Chief, mutual aid bylaw.
Through the amalgamation of the two departments, we deal with South Huron, Perth County and Middlesex County. We've got a lot of different agreements that go back and forth through that. This is just a bylaw for their participation in mutual aid. There are a lot of different bylaws that cover that, are establishing and regulating bylaw, but this is just to participate, and it cleans everything up for our two stations, one department now to go back and forth across those borders.
Thank you for that. Any questions, comments? Councillor Hodgins?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a question that came to my mind. I think, mutual aid's a great thing, and I'm sure most municipalities do participate in that and support their neighbors. To your knowledge, are there situations where municipalities are just like, no, we're sticking within our boundaries and we don't want to use that service, or is it pretty like universally?
It's pretty well universal through southwestern Ontario. It may be in the far north, there would be some of that, but they usually still have agreements when they're overwhelmed because they just can't afford, like, they get overwhelmed, and that's what mutual aid is for, is just add for your neighbors to come in, and it basically it helps that system out. So like even London is in the mutual aid participation with Middlesex County and that, just for the different areas.
Okay, thanks. Makes good sense. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, so then the motion in front of us is to receive the report and that council adopt bylaw number 27-2026, confirming participation of the Lucan Biddulph Fire Department in Middlesex County, Perth County, and Huron County mutual aid plans. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay. Do you have anything else verbal to add, Chief, or anything?
Not at this time. We're prepared for the water shutdown with Lake Huron. Everything, yeah, all's good.
Good. All right, on to other business. There's just a few items on business arising. Reminder, if you want something added, to let Tina know. No notices of motion. Councillor comments. Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a question for Darcy, if I could, just about the survey, second ice pad survey, how that went, the numbers, the response that we've had. I don't expect any results of yet, but what can you tell us about that?
Through the mayor, the survey went very well. I don't have the exact number on me right now, but it's somewhere around the 835 surveys we end up receiving from the second ice pad feasibility study. I am meeting with Monteith Brown tomorrow to start discussing some of the findings and start to move the feasibility study forward. So we will be seeing some results in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Right, just to follow up to that, I was just curious too about just when that would be coming back to either Parks and Rec Committee or to this council, the results.
So the plan is, and we're meeting tomorrow to kind of lay down the dates, but the plan is that it would go to a public open house, a draft feasibility study, go to public open house, then to PRAC after we receive the comments from the public, and then it would come to council in October 13th. I think is the
Right,
date.
thank you. Thanks, Darcy. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Westman.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple of little things. The Granton Annual Firefighters Breakfast be on August 16th from 8 a.m. till 12 noon by donations only, and it's always well attended and everyone's welcome. We also we have the Granton Community Corn Roast happening on Saturday, August 22nd in the Granton Park, and it's a community building event that's been funded through some grant funding. And we'd invite everybody to come out for that and enjoy a beef on a bun or a hot dog and a cob of corn and some fellowship with our neighbors. All right, thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other councillor comments? So I've got a couple. One, I would first of all like to congratulate the Tim Hortons store, recently, they participated in, Camp Day, where, money, I think from hot beverages or any beverages went towards, their camp initiatives. They had silent auction, they had vendors there. And, the Lucan Tim Hortons raised $9,440 that day for camp. And where they need to be congratulated, because in the area that they compete against, they were the #1 store. So well done to them. They put a lot of effort into it. It's important to note that the store that came in second was more than $3,000 behind them. So they were very aggressive, and they also were recognized because they had the most increase year over year. So well done to our local Tim Hortons for that. I also wanted to, I know the barbecue and corn roast in Granton is taking advantage of the community grants that economic development implements, but I also wanted to recognize a thank you card that was received. And it is to the township council and staff, and we'll leave it on display. But this is the second year that a group on Butler Street have organized a road hockey tournament, and they've used it with the community grant funding. From what I hear, the day that they played was during that heat wave. But anyways, as Tina reminded me when we were talking about it, Lucan loves hockey, and so they all come out. So it was signed by all the participants, all the little kiddies that participated. And so it looked like a great day. We certainly want to congratulate the organizers of that. I believe it's the Keller family that really took the lead in organizing it. And it also provides a great opportunity just to remind the community of that grant that is available for subdivisions, community groups to take advantage of, to do something in their little neck of Lucan Biddulph to really grow the spirit of community and bring everybody together. So that certainly will put on display, and we're glad that they had a great day and that they participated in that grant opportunity. And then I also want to take this opportunity just to remind everybody that we are going to change the schedule of meetings for September and October, and we will just be having one meeting in September and one meeting in October, and those dates are September 8th and October 13th. And certainly the public needs to understand it really is, because we're heading into election season. We will be considered a lame duck council at that come August 21st, and we won't have as much business on our plate. That's not to say that there isn't things that we aren't responsible for, that the business of the day will still be moving forward. And should something come up in between those groups or in between those dates that needs to be addressed, we can certainly call a special meeting, and residents should know that we're still providing business as we should. So with that, I would say there's no other comments. Okay, so we do have to go into closed session at this time. And that has to do with the discussion around the acquisition or a disposition of land by a municipality or local board. So at this time, at 53 minutes after 10, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to move us into closed session. Councillor Regan and Deputy Mayor